Class is in session because we've got a new crash course for science and math.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to the final set review for V-BT11 Storm of the Blue Cavalry. We already discussed the other clans for this set, aka Aquaforce, Nubatama, as well as Nova Grappler. So if you're interested or you missed those set reviews, then check out the links on top right here for those respective videos. But today, we're of course covering the Smart Animal Kingdom, which is Great Nature, and all their interesting mathematical and scientific new support cards. And I say that because this set provides brand new cards for the Isabelle lottery mechanic, but also it makes the grandiose return of Bigbelly and its unique old Great Nature-like playstyle. So without further ado, let's jump straight into these cards and see what this set has to offer for Great Nature. And we're going to start off, of course, with the reprint triggers themselves. And Great Nature got a reprint trigger in the likes of a critical and a front, and both of them are just going to be a 1-star for me. Now on that same spot, we also got a new heal trigger, which is Insurance Doctor Care Beth. And it is once again a 1-star because we already have access to a healed for the clan. Now followed up, they also got a new draw trigger, which is Whimsical Idea Call Wata. And this is going to be a 3-star because it's a new draw trigger, so it opens up the possibility for different trigger lineups. Now with that, they also of course are going to get the new Critical Sentinel trigger, and this time that's Application Researcher Ponbelly. And once again a 5-star critical trigger, just like all the other for all the other clans. Now of course, new set means new starter, and this time they have Beginning Hyrax, and once again it's a 1-star because it's just a generic starter with no actual changes. And in terms of vanillas, the new vanilla that the clan got this time around is Geological Scientist Sigur Mol. And once again, it's just a 1-star for me because it's just a generic vanilla that doesn't really change anything for the clan. Now let's dive into the generic support cards, and this card is generic but could also be seen as a specific support card for the Bigbelly engine, but we will get to that once we're gonna cover that specific archetype. But the card that I'm referring to is this grade 1, History Scientist Bushback. And its abilities are Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, cast, discard a card from your hand and draw a card. We've seen this skill many times before, so it's not really something special. But its second ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle it boosted, cost, retire this unit, and one of your rearguards get power plus 10k until the end of turn. So this allows you to give any unit an extra 10k power while sacrificing himself. This could be interesting in combination with something like Monoculous Tiger, as when it gets those heavy guard restrict in the Isabelle deck, you can give the card that is boosting an extra 10k power, making that column that more threatening. But it can also synergize really nicely in the Bigbelly engine, but we will get to that once we're going to cover the card. But with everything said, I think this is a solid 3-star card, as it allows you to do all kinds of different things, and it can give you a lot more power to the board. And if there's a situation when we can superior call units mid-battle to the field for Great Nature, then this card could help you to get more value out of an Exile Circle, because you can call to the Exile Circle, have a 13k attacker, and then afterwards it retires itself, opening up the Exile Circle, and then you can call something else to the Exile Circle. But so far I don't think that Great Nature has access to such a play, but if they might ever get to that, this card can enable that. Now of course there are also going to be some weird ass bad cards in the set, and this time around that's this grade 3 Vacuum Tortoise. And its ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost counter +1 and discard all the cards in your hand and return up to 3 normal units from your drop zone to your deck and shuffle it. If 3 were returned, this unit gets power plus 20k until the end of turn. For 1 counterblast in your entire hand, you can for some reason shuffle back 3 units and this becomes a 32k attacker. Yeah, this is for me a 1-star card. You might say this can work with Bigbelly, but you're never gonna play this card in Bigbelly. Let's be honest, that's not gonna be the case. This card is bad. You're bad. Just no. Now, while we're on the topic of grade 3s, another grade 3, which can be Bigbelly support, and I'm gonna say that more often because every goddamn card that can gain power is some kind of Bigbelly support, but we have Ember's Triangular, and this card has the abilities Continuous Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. During a turn, if you have no other rearguards in the same column as this unit gets power plus 10k. So it can become a 22k attacker on its own without a booster, which is nice. But you're probably going to call this on an Exile Circle, turning it either into a 27k or 32k, which are pretty damn good numbers you're generating. But on top of that, it also has the skill Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, hits, one of your rearguards get power plus 10k until the end of turn. So on top of it being a pretty damn good beater, it can also turn all your other cards into pretty damn good beaters, which is pretty damn good in my honest opinion, and I think it's a solid 3-star card for what it does. Yes, it's on hit, which most likely will not resolve, but in the early game with such a high beater, it probably has a chance to get 1 or 2 hits off of its on hit effect, which can help you to set up for some powerful plays. Now, for the final generic support card that we've got for the clan is of course the Great Researcher, which is Diligent Assistant Mini Belly. And its unique effect is continuous rearguard circle during your turn. If you have a unit on an additional rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 5k. So it's once again something pretty easy to fulfill, but its main value of course lies in the Great Research ability, so therefore it's of course a 5-star card like any other of the Great Researchers. Now I've already name dropped his name a couple of times, so let's talk about the Professor, as here we have famous Professor Bigbelly. And its abilities are Auto and Vanguard Circle. When your rearguard is retired by a card's ability during each battle phase or each end phase, you may draw a card. So before I'm gonna explain how this card works, let's tackle his second ability because that makes a lot of sense with the rest. His second ability is Auto and Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counter plus 1, choose one of your power 20k or greater rearguards and stand it. If your soul has a grade 3, stand all of your power 20k or greater rearguards. So his first ability allows you to recoup the loss of any units the moment that they are retired during your battle phase, your opponent's battle phase, or during your end phase or your opponent's end phase. That's incredibly important because a lot of cards within the Bigbelly archetype will retire themselves at the end phase. So you retire them because they did something good, and then you draw new cards in the mean, so you compensate the losses you generate by doing their skills, which is pretty damn good. But interesting enough, because this states during either player's battle phase or either player's end phase, this means it also works against certain clans that have mid-battle retire effects, like Kangaroo for example, and you can actually get draws off of their skills, which is pretty damn good. But this skill, plus the fact that it can restand 20k or greater units, is the reason why this card was really good in combination with the grade 1 that we just talked about. Because that grade 1 retires itself during the battle phase. So not only can that card give one of your units 10k power, potentially putting them over that 20k threshold, you also get the draw off of the fact that it retires itself, which means you get a lot of value from the grade 1 within Bigbelly. But that's just the basic gist of it, and this power threshold restand ability also explains why the previous grade 3s that we just talked about are pseudo Bigbelly support, because they themselves get over that 20k threshold, and the grade 3 that has the on-hit effect can also turn other units over the 20k threshold, so it suddenly makes a lot more sense. But this is just the bare bone basics of what Bigbelly can do, because it can do so much more, and to have a better understanding of what it has in store for us, let's go over the many different supporting cards around Bigbelly before we're gonna analyze how strong this card actually is. One of the key cards that actually can explain how strong Bigbelly actually is this grade 3 Searcher of Perfect Circle Flow Panther. This grade 3 has the ability act on Vanguard Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, cost Soul plus 1. Choose one of your units and it gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. At the end of the turn, retire the chosen rearguard by this effect, and if this unit is on a Vanguard Circle, draw a card. So this card allows us to get any unit plus 10k power, making it more easier to attain that 20k threshold. It can give it to itself, turning it into a 22k unit, so it already overcomes that threshold. But it can also give any 9k on an Excel circle that 10k, turning them into 24k units, once again overcoming that threshold. But the more interesting part lies in its second ability, which is Auto. When retired from the rearguard circle by your card's ability, if you have a Vanguard with Bigbelly in its card name, you may put this card into your soul. So this card can retire itself at the end of the turn if it gave itself the 10k power buff or something else did that. And then once it retires, it puts itself immediately into the soul, not only recouping the loss of its own ability, but it puts a grade 3 in your soul without having the need to rewrite another Bigbelly, which puts the complete skill online for Bigbelly to then restand all of your 20k power units, making that single counterblast potentially result into 3, 4, 5 extra attacks which is insane value. And this grade 3 helps you to not only acquire those thresholds, but also get that grade 3 into the soul more consistently. So for that, this is a solid 4-star card in my opinion for the Bigbelly engine. Now another card that works really nicely with the Bigbelly engine is this grade 2 Measured Fossa. And its ability is auto Vanguard the Record Circle. When placed from hand, cost countable as 1, look at 2 cards from the top of your deck, call to 1 card from among them to the Record Circle, and put the rest into the drop zone. So this is just a generic plus engine that allows you to pick one of the 2 cards near your top 2, which can be pretty nice, but the only problem is that it needs to be called to the Record Circle, so if there's no really good cards in the top 2, then you're forced to call a bad card, which otherwise could have gone to your hand if maybe, say, both cards were triggers. But its main application for the Bigbelly engine lies in its second ability, which is auto Record Circle. Once a turn, when it attacks, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost Soulless 1, choose one of your rearguards, it gets power plus 10k until the end of turn, and at the end of that turn, retire that unit. So, once again, it allows us to give an extra 10k power bump to one of your units, so 12ks becomes 22ks, 14ks become 24ks, that's aka grade 2s on the Excel circle, and it then retired at the end of turn, allows you to get more draw value with Bigbelly, which can be pretty nice. So this can be a potential plus engine, but it also enables you to get those power bumps and to meet those requirements and criteria for Bigbelly, which is pretty damn good. And it, again, using Soul means that you can save your counterblast for your restand capability, or potentially its plus effect. So for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card for the clan, as it's just pretty damn nice, and it could even be used outside of the Bigbelly engine, as it's not restricted to the Bigbelly engine, unlike certain other cards. Now, another grade 2, which can be pretty interesting, is Blusher Parakeet. This card has the ability Auto Vanguard the Record Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1. Look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal to 1 grade 3 from among them, put them into your hand, shuffle your deck. This unit gets power plus 3k until the end of turn, and if this unit is on a rearguard circle, at the end of the turn, retire this unit. So this allows you to get more consistent access to your grade 3s, which is really good because you need your Bigbellies and your Flow Panthers to get to your consistent engine much faster. But there is another grade 3, which we will go into more depth once we've seen the entire engine, which is integral to the entire Bigbelly package if you want to go very aggressive, very fast. So that means you're going to be reliant on multiple grade 3s. So an effect like this can help you to get more consistent access to those cards. And it getting the plus 3k power might sound insufficient, but it's actually pretty damn significant, because grade 2 9ks on a non-Excel circle, if they get the 10k power buff that we see so far, that means they're 19k and not 20k or higher. So they need 1 extra k to meet that criteria. So it being able to turn itself into a 12k unit suddenly makes that 10k power buff that we might get from another unit seem that more impactful. So it's pretty damn good in synergistic place with other cards within the Bigbelly engine. So for what it does, for the cost of a counterblast, and it helps, it makes it a pretty good, better consistent card, but it doesn't inherently push the engine over the edge like some other cards. So I think for what it provides is a solid 3-star card, because it's a good grade 3 searcher, but probably will not be seen actual play outside of the Bigbelly engine, because you don't get in the inherent value of the potential retire that it forces itself to do at the end of your turn. Now, another really good grade 2 for the Bigbelly engine is this grade 2 Spool Merry, and her ability is auto rearguard circle. When it attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Bigbelly in its card name, you may have one of your Vanguards and this unit get power plus 10k until the end of turn. If you do, at the end of the turn, retire this unit. So not only can it give itself 10k for free, it also gives your Vanguard 10k for free. So it can probably meet the requirement on the Excel circle, but the more important thing here is that all our units will probably hit for decent numbers, but our Vanguard so far is just 12k. That's the same issue that we've seen with Victor, that it itself is just 12k, while our other rearguards are pretty damn massive. This Spool Merry allows us to, at the very least, give Bigbelly an additional 10k, making it a 22k attacker, plus the booster behind it, so that means it will hit for decent numbers around your already pretty big sizable units. And it doing it just for free on attack is pretty damn good. But we also have the second effect, which is auto. When rode upon, you may call this card to the rearguard circle. So it isn't inherently a bad ride target, but as seen as most of our cards that give units plus 10k power, use a soul, makes this ability kind of iffy, because you call it out, which also requires you to waste a soul. But it can give those power pumps for free, so you might or might not make the decision that this card is pretty good for this particular scenario. But just giving the power for free to multiple units gives me enough reason to give this card 4 stars. This allows the Bigbelly engine to just hit for massive numbers on a consistent basis without the interference of your opponent by them either damage denying you or doing some kind of crazy play that limits your potential plays, whatever you might do. Now, of course, we've seen a couple of cards that uses Counterblast and Soul, so we need some resource tools. And so far, we've seen one in-archetype resource engine for Bigbelly, which is this Grade 1 Scoring Master Mousetoby. And its ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When an attack hits, draw a card. But its second ability is Auto. When retired from the Vanguard Circle by your card's ability, if you have a Vanguard with Bigbelly in its card name, countercharge 1. So for me, this is going to be a 3-star card. It's just a generic countercharge engine, nothing really special. It's kind of annoying that it needs to be retired again to countercharge, meaning you need to power pump it with a specific power pump that also forces the unit to be retired. And to actually make that count, that means this card needs to be in the Axle Circle, because if not, that 10k power bump will go to waste, as it's just an 18k, so it will not restand. So that gives some limitations to the usefulness of this card within the engine itself. But then again, it's still nice to have this countercharge engine. On overall first glance, it doesn't look like the Bigbelly needs it, because Bigbelly is just one counterblast, and we could use the Parakeet, which is not a counterblast. But this particular Grade 3 that I'm going to discuss in a moment here can change that completely, and then suddenly we actually need that counterblast, or those extra countercharges. So it's a solid 3-star card for me. Then the final card for the Bigbelly engine that we have seen so far is this Grade 2 Burden Kangaroo. And its abilities continues a Vanguard Circle. During the battle it attacked, if your Vanguard is Grade 3 or greater, and this unit's power is 20k or greater, your opponent cannot call Sentinels from his or her hand to the Guardian Circle. So this gives you a Sentinel Guard Restrict on a Grade 2, which has a decent amount of power, and with Bigbelly will swing twice, but it's reliant on other effects. And is this Sentinel Restrict actually that impactful? We already are gonna attack with pretty big numbers, so I'm not so sure if this will make a biggest impact, and we probably have better cards to run in the Grade 2 slots than this particular card, so I will only give it 2 stars. Maybe will be attack option, but I'm not so sure about that. So with that Grade 2 discussed, we've seen the entire core package for Bigbelly in this set, so we can once again go back to the Professor and see how good this card actually is. So we've seen a lot of cards that allows us to give 10k power bumps to either the units themselves or to other units, making it very easy to acquire that 20k threshold, because Grade 3s on non-Axle circles with 110k are already 22k, meaning those Axle circles will be then saved for our Grade 1s and Grade 2s, which will turn them into 13k or 14k units, and with that extra 10k, we'll turn them over the 20k threshold, so it's actually pretty damn easy to fulfill the condition. Now, you could also go for Axle 1, which means that Grade 1s and Grade 2s will become 18k, 19k, so only with a 5k power bump or a certain power bump like the Parakeet that gives plus 3k can acquire it. But Axle 2 is also a pretty damn safe bet for what it already can provide for the skills inherently in the engine. But then we get to the point where we want to have a Grade 3 in the soul so we can resend all of our units. We've seen that we can rely on Flow of Panther that allows us to get to this as soon as turn 4 without having the need to rewrite into our Bigbelly. That is pretty good because it increases the consistency of acquiring this skill. But we can actually do this a bit better, because we can get to this condition that we have a Grade 3 in the soul on the very first Grade 3 turn. And this all has to do thanks to the fact that we have Hemske's support. And yes, I know that sounds weird, but it's because of the fact that Hemske's rival Rocket Pencil Hamden exists. This card allows us, for the cost of 1 counterblast, to put a card into the soul the moment that we place a unit on the additional rearguard circle, aka the Axle circles. So this allows us to put an extra Grade 3 from our hand into the soul during the main phase. That in itself is already pretty damn good, but we go one step beyond that, because this card also gives that unit on the Axle circle an additional 10k power, and it gives itself 10k power, turning itself into a 22k unit on the normal circle, and that Grade 1 or Grade 2 into a 23 or 24. So not only are you fulfilling for the condition to reset everything that is 20k power, you also make it possible that Hamden and that called unit are going to restand off of your Bigbelly. And then we can see why Counterblast is suddenly a lot more proactive in this deck, because we're going to resolve in Hamden to get to this play as fast as possible, but we're probably going to resolve Hamden as often as possible to give those massive power numbers to our columns to restand every single unit that we might call to the field. And then suddenly the great one Mousetoby sounds a lot more appealing because it gives us the count charges that we're going to need. And then together with cards like the Fossa, as well as Flow Panther, as well as Spool Merry, that can give even more power to the field and allows us to even empower our Vanguard, means that Bigbelly looks a lot more appealing. Because we can have a strong field with columns that are easy over the 20, 23, 22, whatever K power. And we have a Vanguard that will restand all those units. So on the very first grade 3 turn, we could potentially attack 7 times, and it's possible that our opponent is still at grade 2. Yeah, if that doesn't sound crazy, then I don't know what to tell you. And for that, I'm definitely gonna give Bigbelly a solid 5-star card. This card is pretty damn good. And then you can definitely say this is super inconsistent because you need to have 3 grade 3s in your hand, and 2 of those grade 3s need to be specific grade 3s. But this is just the high-roll nature of Bigbelly. Bigbelly inherently gives you a lot of value because all these cards pump up your field, they retire themselves, and you immediately draw those cards back, allowing you to grant access to offensive capabilities while not sacrificing on guard potential, which not a lot of clans can do. That's the big major factor of this old Great Nature playstyle, and Bigbelly is definitely benefiting from that aspect. But that said, Bigbelly isn't the only major boss unit for Great Nature, because this set also held home to a new Isabelle. Because the other VR, and arguably the main VR of this set, is Sage Saint, Mentor of Black Liquor, Isabelle. And this Isabelle has 3 abilities, and one of those effects is Continuous Vanguard Circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you perform both of the effects of perform one of the effects. So this is identical to the previous Isabelle, and this is something that we really wanted to have on this Isabelle, making it so that neither of the Isabelle is an actual bad right target. We can sit on both of them, but preferably we want to sit on this one because of the following effects. As our second effect is Auto Vanguard Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck and put them on the top of your deck in any order. So this allows you to have some kind of Oracle Think Tank effect where you can see the top 3 and place them in the order that you like. This inherently already enables you to have better drive checks because you can put the triggers in a way that you can drive check those triggers. But because you see the top 3 means you could also set up defensive triggers, as you can drive check 2 non-triggers and set up a defensive heal or draw trigger for when your opponent is going to attack you, which is pretty damn good. But as another thing, this card allows you to set up your mill cards that you're going to mill with your other effects. Because yes, you're going to get both effects off of your first effect, but if your opponent is still grade 2, that's not the case. So you can then select which type of effects you're going to activate for a certain mill mechanics. So that's actually pretty damn good. But there's another aspect to this effect, because certain effects allow us to potentially superior call the card that we mill, or immediately get that card back into our hand. And even though we might get both effects, we might not want to superior call a trigger, so we put the trigger maybe lower and get a strong unit on the top, so we mill that strong unit and immediately call that unit to the field with certain effects. So this just gives us more inherent control over what we're going to acquire and what value we're going to get that specific turn. And every effect that allows you to get more control over the value of your skills and plays is something that is really powerful and shouldn't be overlooked. So this effect is already inherently really strong. But that's not the main selling point, because we also has another effect which is pretty good, and that is Act on Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, cost counter +1, choose one of your units with auto abilities with when placed, and activate it. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, all of your front row units get power plus 10k until the end of turn. Does not mean cost and conditions of the autos can be ignored. What I mean with that is basically if you forcefully activate it on place effect, you still are going to look at the skill conditions. So is the unit on a rearguard circle, it can only be activated in rearguard effect. So you cannot activate Vanguard abilities while they're on the rearguard circle. But it also means you still need to pay for the cost. So if those on place effects have Counterblast as a cost or Soul Blast as a cost, you still need to pay those costs after you already paid the Counterblast for this cost. So that means Certain effects might not be as accessible as you're already paying a counterblast, so even cost as another counterblast might be a bit heavy, but in certain situations, this allows you to get a lot of value, because most unplaced effects are pretty powerful because of the fact that you can only get one shot per card of those effects. This card allows you to cheat a little bit, and you can forcefully activate them again. Now, normally I don't want to bring in promos into the mix, but the new Isabelle promo that's going to be released alongside this set is pretty damn good, because it allows you to generate counter charge and soul charge, and it's on an unplace effect. So you could actually generate resources with this effect because you can forcefully activate that effect again. But this card can just activate any other unplace effect, including herself. She has the unplace effect that allows you to check the top 3. You can call her to the field, check the top 3, use a couple of mill skills so you already get the value, and then before you attack, you can use her ability, counter +1, check the top 3 again, set up your defensive triggers, your drive checks, and on top of that, the potential is that all your front row units get an additional 10k power, making your attacks that more threatening. That in itself shows you already how versatile this Isabelle is. But we can look at the new support cards around her to get a better glimpse of how good she actually is, because we get even more value in this set for her main abilities. And one of those cards is this grade 1 Besom Ringtail, and its effect is auto rearguard circle when it attacks or boosts, costs counter +1, put the top card of your deck into the drop zone and perform one of the effects below depending on the card's type. Normal unit, draw a card, trigger unit, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. If this sounds familiar, that's because this is basically a smaller binoculars tiger, because it, instead of giving 3 units plus 5k power, it gives itself plus 5k power. But the rest is the exact same value. Still the draw, and still the potential retire. And just like Binoculars, this is an on-attack skill, so it gives you multiple access to its ability if you want to use it multiple turns after turn. Overall, I think it's a solid 4-star card. Yes, it's weaker than Binoculars, but in certain situations where you want to play other grade 2s, you can still get this similar effect off in your grade 1s. So you can basically get this similar effect, but now decide if you want to have it in your grade 2 lineup or in your grade 1 lineup. So for that, I think it's a okay 4-star card. It's definitely on the weaker side of the 4 stars, but it's nice to have this addition in the lineup for great nature as well. Now, another grade 1 that we have is this grade 1 Clerical Kakapo. And Kakapo has the ability auto Vanguard the rearguard circle when placed. Put the top card of your deck into the drop zone and perform one of the effects below depending on the card's type. Normal unit, draw a card, and discard a card from your hand. Trigger unit, draw a card, and put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. So this is a pretty fast cycle card, as you can cycle 2 cards, but one goes to the drop zone and one goes to the bottom of the deck. The bottom of the deck card might not always come up as often, but you could put triggers back into the deck, and then with your grade 3 searcher, you could shuffle the deck, so those triggers could potentially go to the top and have more consistent access to triggers. But overall, it's just a 3-star card, as it allows you to increase the consistency of your deck. And we have seen this in another grade 1, which allows you to draw cards and discard. But the fact that this also allows you to maybe put one of those cards back into the deck can at least hamper the stress on your deck a little bit, unlike the other grade 1 that just discards them entirely. Now, the final new card that we've got for this mill mechanic, and which is probably the strongest of them all, is this grade 2 Lap Daughter, and its ability is auto Vanguard the rearguard circle. When placed, cost counter +1. Put the top card of your deck into the drop zone and perform one of the effects below depending on the card's type. Normal unit, call that card to the rearguard circle. Trigger unit, this unit gets power plus 15k until the end of turn. Both are pretty damn good, but in combination with Isabelle, it's a counterblast to call a rearguard to the field, and with Isabelle you can stack the deck. This is what I meant, that you might want to control a little bit even though you might get both effects. But also this will become a 24k attacker, which is pretty good numbers, and with the potential 10k power buff of Isabelle will turn into a 34k attacker. So this is one of your main beaters that can also give you more value over time. So this one is for me an obvious 5-star card, because its effect is pretty damn powerful, and in combination with Isabelle can be really deadly. So once we go back to Isabelle, we can see the entire package, and we can safely say that Isabelle, in my honest opinion, is a 5-star card. Yes, some of the value comes a little bit because of the resource card that we're going to get. That grade 1 promo, which gives you counters and soul charge, saves the deck. But even without that card, Isabelle on her own is really damn powerful. Getting both effects, being able to check top 3 and manipulate them. But even then, we also have the other skill, which allows her to reuse on-place effects, which in itself is already cheating the skills, but it can also empower your field. So all her free skills allows you to cheat the game in some kind of way. And usually a card that allows you to cheat one game aspect is seen as a really strong card, but this card cheats 3 different game aspects. And that in itself should already tell you that this Isabelle is a pretty damn powerful card. But of course she is reliant on the support cards around her to decide how strong she's going to be. And what we've seen so far, there are a lot of strong cards within Great Nature that synergize with her. And within this set alone, we've got the Daughter, which is a really strong Grade 2 unit. But that promo is definitely changing a lot of aspects, because the support cards around Isabelle is pretty counterblast and soul blast heavy. The resources are quite straining on the deck, but that promo saves Isabelle a lot. So with everything in mind, even though the promo might not come out just yet or will take a while, I still gonna give this card 5 stars. This Isabelle is pretty damn strong, but I'm definitely aware that she wouldn't be as strong and as prominent as she would be without that promo being confirmed. And with that, we discuss all the cards for Great Nature in this set. We've seen a lot of interesting new stuff. We've got the new Great Nature Bigbelly engine that basically is a homage to the old playstyle of Great Nature, with pumping your units to extra power and then retiring themselves to then get more value over time, which basically enables you to be aggressive without sacrificing guard value. And of course, we've got some new support for the Isabelle lottery mechanic with the new Isabelle, as well as a couple more lottery cards around them, which are somewhat questionable, except for the Grade 2, which is pretty damn good in my opinion. That Daughter is a pretty nice addition. And of course, we've got some generic throwaway cards, which might or might not come up here and there. But overall, I think it's a pretty nice package for Great Nature, and there's definitely something for any type of player within the clan, as there are quite a wider range of playstyles provided by this set. So with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this new support line for Great Nature. Are you happy with the new Isabelle? Are you excited for Bigbelly and the new playstyle that it provides to the clan? Or were you more expecting of a different support card or support style for a certain archetype? Let me know in the comments down below all your thoughts and opinions. This video has been brought to you by lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I see you guys in the next one.